Okay, good morning. Hopefully you guys had a good weekend. Had some good rain. See, they got the AC working. So let me ask you guys a question. Why do platelets make good friends? Why do platelets make good friends?
Stick together.
Because they stick together. All right, good job. They stick together. We are going to actually start figuring out how to read some EKGs today. We're going to talk about rate, and then we'll go into rhythm basics, and then our next lecture will go through some specific rhythms. We'll talk about our rate and rhythm basics here, our TLOs. Let's see here. Fennel, Alex Fennel. Anything? Okay, sir. Which of the following numbers points to the PR segment? Number 2. Very good. What's number 5? QT interval. Okay, QT interval. Okay. What is the rule of thumb for the QT interval ends? Ends, where you at? Okay, man, what's the rule of thumb for the QT interval? Half of the R to R. Okay? And if you were a male, what would your QT interval need to be? 350 to 450. All right, and for females, 360 to 460. Very good, very good. Thank you. All righty, so we got number 2 there. All right, here we go. Donovan. Anywhere? Carl. Sir? Okay, sir. This heart right here has a septum plus or minus right ventricle. What looks at those areas? What leads? What's on the right side? AVR, good. What looks at also looks like the septum? V. Good, that's half of it. V1 and V2. Right, so AVR, V1, V2, right? AVR, V1, V2. Remember, nothing looks really good at the right side of the right ventricle. But AVR is going to give us a little bit of view of that right ventricle. Okay, V1, V2 is going to do septum. AVR looks at the upper portion of the septum. All right, anterior wall. Anthony. Autumn Anthony.
V3, V4.
V3, V4, anterior. Very good. Another one. Geez, we're racking up today. All right, let's go with, how do you say it? Troyer? Trory? How do you say it?
You say what Traore.
Trory. Okay. Okay, sir. Lateral wall. What looks like the lateral wall? V5, V6. What else? Lead V
He's probably P6 AVL.
AVF?
AVL.
AVL? What else?
That's what I know.
That's all you got. That's all you got for me. Okay. Anybody got it? Leg 1. 1, AVL, 5, 6. 1, AVL, 5, 6. Okay, and then we have inferior. Brown. Donnell Brown. Two, 3, AVF. Okay, 2, 3, AVS, because our inferior leads. Those are our inferior leads. All right, very good, y'all. Very good. All right. Every single time that you read an ECG, you must have a deliberate approach. You can choose whatever approach you want, but you need to do the same approach every single time. And for many, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, they've been teaching this approach. This approach is good. Okay, this approach is good. That's why it sticks around. We're going to look at the rate. We're going to look at the rhythm. The rhythm includes a bunch of parts of the ECG, the intervals, the waves, the segments. Okay, after that we look at the axis, we look at hypertrophy, infarct. Of course, you have to do clinical correlation. If someone comes in and they're talking to you, no chest pain, no short of breath, no dizziness, and you find something abnormal on the ECG, say, is this really an abnormality or is this a normal variant for this person? And if we have an old ECG, you want to pull that out and compare. Is there something new on an ECG in comparison to the old ECG? Now, some of you that have some expertise with reading ECGs may say, yeah, but don't we want to look to make sure that person's not having a heart attack first? Well, that's a good thought, but can you die from something worse than a heart attack before you die from a heart attack? Yeah, you can't. Like VTAC, like VFib. Okay, so we need to identify those things, and that's going to help us with that rate. That rate's going to say, is this fast or slow? Okay, is this fast or slow, or is it within a normal range? So you can actually die from a fast heart rate or super slow heart rate faster than you can an infarction. Right? And that's why we go through this approach. So we're going to start by trying to determine how do we identify the rate. We know that if the SA node is pacing, our normal rate is going to be 60 to 100. SA node can still be pacing when we have rates less than 60, like my resting heart rate is usually in the mid-40s. Okay? So we have what's called a sinus bradycardia, or if you have a bradycardic rate, it's going to be a rate that's less than 60. A tachycardic rate could be a sinus tachycardia, or it could be another tachycardic rate greater than 100. So if you have a rate of 101, that is technically considered tachycardia. Rate of 59, that is considered bradycardia. Now we then identify if that's coming from the SA node or coming from somewhere else, and we'll show you how to do that throughout this. We know that if the SA node doesn't fire for some reason, those other parts of the heart, they're going to have overdrive suppression. They're going to take over the pacemaking function. First, it's going to be in the atrium, pace between 60 and 80. After that's going to be around the junctional, so AV node area, 40 to 60. And then we got to go down to the ventricle. Ventricles will pace at 20 to 40. And the reason why the ventricles are pacing so slow is because we no longer are using that electric conduction pathway. We're doing myocyte to myocyte. It takes a lot longer. We don't have so our rate itself is going to be a lot slower. The rate of the heart can be affected by autonomic stimulus, can be affected by medications as well. When we think about autonomic stimulus, we think about the autonomic nervous system. Okay? And we have these specialized ganglia that are going to cause increase or decrease in the heart rate, increase or decrease in the blood pressure as well. Okay? We have two branches that we talk about for our autonomic nervous system that affect the heart. And that is the sympathetic or adrenergic and the parasympathetic, that's cholinergic. And although we know that this autonomic nervous system really affects lots of parts of the body, we're going to focus on how it affects the heart. So our sympathetic system, okay, what else do we call our sympathetic system? Our fight or flight. Our fight or flight. It's going to affect both the atria and the ventricles. And if we have activation of our sympathetic system, we're going to have release of norepinephrine, which means increase in heart rate. Okay? Constriction of the arteries, which is going to cause increase in blood pressure. The other thing we have to increase of is irritability of foci, which means this. You can have the SA node that is pacing, okay? The SA node is firing. But if you have extreme irritability of either the atria or the ventricles, you can have beats that occur in between the SA node firing. Okay? So we've got a beat from the SA node. SA node is sending down that electrical conduction. But if there's an area in the heart that's irritable, not only are we going to have that initial PQRST, we might have another one that goes in between the next PQRST, so a premature beat, or we could have an ectopic beat. And that's because of irritability of foci, other foci in the atria or the ventricles. If our parasympathetic system is affected, now that kind of slows things down, all right? There are brakes of the heart. If this gets activated, we're going to have release of acetylcholine. Okay? That decrease in our heart rate is going to cause vasodilation, so we're going to have typically a decrease in not only the blood pressure, but decreasing the contraction strength as well. So how might that person present? If they come in, if they have a decrease in heart rate, decrease in blood pressure, and vasodilation. Bradycardic, dizzy, because we don't have as much contraction strength either, so we're not forcefully pushing that blood out of the ventricle. It's getting out there, okay, but remember the main things that the body worries about, the heart, okay, the lungs, and then the brain. So heart, lungs, then the brain. So we still have propulsion of blood, but it's not going to be as strong as we would normally see it. Okay? And we have decrease in those other foci that might be firing. So we're not going to see as many ectopic beats or premature beats that are coming in between normal beats. So when we think about the rate then, and how this autonomic nervous system affects the rate, we need to know how to determine the rate. So one of the main ways that we can determine the rate is something called the counting method. Counting method. You're going to use your R to R interval for the counting method. That's one of the reasons we have the R to R interval, and how we use the R to R interval is to help us determine the rate and to help us determine the rhythm. So we're going to find an R wave. We can find any R wave, okay, but we like to find an R wave that's on a dark black line because this makes math a lot easier, especially on a Monday morning. So we have an R wave right here in the middle that happens to fall on a dark black line. That is going to be your start point. There is no number that is assigned to that first beat. Okay? And again, you could do this other beat, you could use any of these, but if you find one on a dark black line, it makes your numbers flow a lot smoother. So then we're going to go to the next dark black line. The next dark black line is going to be assigned the number 300. The next dark black line is going to be assigned the number 150. The next dark black line is 100, and then we have 75, 60, 50. If the rate is less than 50, we use something other than the counting method to determine the rate. We'll talk about that in a minute. So we've got our start line. There's 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, 50. You've got to memorize those numbers. You must. Okay, because you're going to use counting method from here on out in the majority of your ECGs. Okay? So some of you might be saying, how do we know it's 300? Well, what did we say one big box is? How many seconds is that horizontally? 0.2. Okay? Well, 0.2 actually happens to be 1/300th of a minute. Do we want to do the math? I don't think we do. So it happens to be 1/300th. Well, then we go to two boxes. That's going to be 2 300ths or 150. And then three boxes, 3 300. Okay? And then 4, and then 5. And that's how we get those numbers. So we don't randomly choose these numbers. It's based on the seconds that are assigned to the box. Right? So 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, 50 is going to be our counting method. You will have a test question on this, I promise you. Okay? And the majority of you will get it right. But the other part of you guys are gonna assign that first R, you're gonna assign the 300 to there, and your numbers are gonna be all screwed up. You can't give that first box a number because we haven't even gone anywhere yet. You've got to wait for that 0.2 seconds to go by before we can assign it a number. So the first R is no number. The second R, or the second dark line, is when you're going to assign your number. 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, 50. Okay, all of you. So if we look at this, this little strip here, what do we say the approximate heart rate is? 75, and then we're to the left of that a little bit, so maybe like 77 or so. We're approximating. Because does it matter if it's 75 or 80, or 75 or 77? No, but it matters if it's 75 or 120. Okay, so 5 to 7 beats, 10 beats is not going to make a difference typically in the management of this patient. Okay, but so we're doing an estimation of what our rate is. No, so the R does not have to start on the line, but it makes things a lot easier because you choose this first R, okay? So we're starting here in the middle of somewhere, right? So you choose this first R and you say, okay, well now I've got to go to the middle of this one, and I've got to go to the middle of this one, and to the middle of this one, and the middle of this one. So you can do it that way, but I'm going to show you, if you do it that way, I'm going to show you an easier way to do that in just a minute. So again, once our rate gets down to 60, or down to 50, then we choose a different way of assessing the rate. Okay? The different ways, we can use a 6-second method or a 10-second method. Remember, this is beats per minute. So if I say we're going to use the 6-second method, and we come up with a number, let me just say a random number of 3, how do I determine how many beats per minute this is going to be? It's 6 seconds times 10, which is 60. Okay, so if we use a 6-second method, we've got to do beats per minute, so it's going to be 6 times 10. Okay, so how do I know what 6 seconds is? Well, on the ECG, on all ECGs, there's these little tick marks. Okay, on our ECGs at BMC, we have actually little arrows. Some ECGs have little stars, some have little circles. But there's these marks that you can see, right? Here's a mark, 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 okay? That's on every single ECG to determine your 3 or 6 second marks. So each one of these ticks, from here to the next one, that's 3 seconds. From here to this next one, that's 3 seconds. Okay, here to this one, 3 seconds, 3 seconds. We're just going to choose 2 of those. We'll choose 1, 2. You can do 1, 2. It doesn't matter. You're going to choose a total of 1, 2, 3 lines, which gives you 3 seconds plus 3 seconds. And you're going to count the number of R waves or QRS complexes in between those sets of lines. So we have a line here and we have a line here. This is 3 seconds. This is 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we have 3 QRS complexes. We're going to times that by 10, which gives us, this person would have a heart rate of 30 beats per minute. 30 beats per minute. Okay, so if I give you a question and I said, this is a 6-second strip, okay, you've got to count the first 3 seconds and your second. So it's a total of 3 tick marks. Count the number of QRS complexes in between those 3 tick marks and times it by 6, and that's going to give you your number. So if we have a rhythm or a rate that's less than 50, we can use this 6 second. Okay. Also, if you have an irregular rate, you cannot use the counting method if you have an irregular rate. Okay, so if you're or irregular rhythm, if you're looking at that, you can see the R to R's are not marching out normally, and this R seems to be closer, this R seems to be further away. You can't use the counting method. The counting method can only be used for rates greater than 50, and they have to be regular. So irregular or bradycardic rates, okay, or rhythms, you have to use the 6-second method, or you can use the 10-second method. Remember we talked initially about 12-lead ECG, and the bottom of that 12-lead ECG is a 10-second rhythm strip. It doesn't matter what lead it is, it uses lead 2, but it's 10 seconds. So now what do? If I say, you're going to get this ECG, tell me what the rate is based on a 10-second strip, what do? Times it by 6 and count what? All the Kuros complexes along that 10 second. Okay? So we can use this for rates less than 50, we can use this for irregular, you can use it for regular rates as well. Okay? It does, you can use the 6-second method, you can use the 10-second method for any rate. Okay? But you cannot use the counting method for any rate in rhythm. Counting method, if it's below 50 or it's an irregular rhythm, you cannot use the counting method. So this one at 10 seconds, we're going to times it by 6. So how many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 times 6 is 42. Okay? 7 times 6 is 42. And that's how we do that. So remember, it's beats per minute. And again, you guys will have a question on this on the exam. And the most common mistake is that you're times in 6 by 6 and 10 by 10, and you're coming up with all sorts of crazy numbers. Because those answers will be there, of course. They're going to be there. So remember, your whole goal is to equal a minute. 6 times 10 is 60, 10 times 6 is 60. If you are looking all through there, you can't find an R wave that lands on a dark line, and you want to use this counting method, use your calipers. Take your calipers, put it on the top of one R wave to the very top of the very next R wave. Okay? Leave those calipers, don't push them together, just put them on there, and then take that and transpose it onto a dark line. And say, okay, well, I started here, I was in the middle here, but I'm going to take it up here, and that will put you on one dark black line, and you can count your rate from there from your counting method. All right, so we have that here. This person, so this is not on a dark line, and this is not. So what they did is they did the calipers here, now they're going to take these calipers in that same width, and they're going to transpose it up here, and it'll land here, and it'll land over here, and then you can use your counting method to determine what the rate is. Or you can just do the 6-second method, or the 10-second method. If you don't want to do all that, it's a lot of work, right? But again, you can use the 6-second method, you can use the 10-second method for any rate or rhythm. You cannot use the counting method for any rate or rhythm. Less than 50, okay? Or irregular rhythms, you must use 6 or 10. So we have this rhythm that's coming in. Okay? When we're looking at this rhythm, what method can we use to determine what the rate is for this rhythm strip? What's that? Can we use the counting? Oh, sorry. It's so cold in here. Can we use the counting method?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so let's see. What does this first one start at? 0. Then we have 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, 50. And we're kind of in between 50 and 60. So we say the rate is 55. Can we use the 6-second method? We don't have enough space. We don't have enough tick marks. We don't have 6 seconds. Okay, so you see a tick mark here, and you see a tick mark here, but we need 3 tick marks to give us 3 seconds, 6 seconds. We cannot use it. Can we use the 10-second method? No. Cannot. We don't have 10 seconds. We don't have 10 seconds. So the only thing we can use for this one, and we can use it because the rate is greater than 60 or greater than 50, and it's regular. If we march these out, they would be regular. And if you ever are like looking at it like, is it regular or not? Take your calipers. Take your calipers, put it on your first R and second R. Walk it over to the next one. Walk it over. You should not have to adjust your calipers at all if it's a regular rhythm. What about this rate? And what can we use to determine this rate? counting method. Again, we don't have 6 seconds. We don't have 10 seconds. So if we start on this dark black line, we have 300, 150, 100. Okay, well, we're closer to 150 than we are 100. But the really cool thing is that we know there's 5 little small boxes in between here. So this would be 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150. So a rate of about 130. Okay, that would be considered a tachycardic rate. Now, we're not saying this is a sinus tachycardia. Okay, we're just saying it's a tachycardic rate, because there are different things we have to look at to determine if this is still coming from the SA node. So when we're calculating those rates, a driver. Okay, so when we're calculating those rates, what are the numbers that we're going to use to calculate those rates?
300, 150,
Right, so bravo, right? Bravo. Here you go, sir. Oh. All righty, very good. All right, so let's see now. Row it. Relax. Okay, sir. You have a rate, if there's 3.5 beats on a 6-second strip, what would be our rate be? 35, because we have 3.5 beats on 6 seconds, 6 times, so we times it by 10, so 3.5 times 10 is going to give us our 35 beats per minute. Very good. What's that? Well, you can have it so it's, when you're looking at the QRS complex, you can have it so it's kind of half on, half off. And you're like, well, so it's like 3 impossible. Anybody know what I mean by 3 impossible? Spades? Spades? Yeah, spades. Like 3 impossible. 3 impossible. Spades. Also, euchre. Nobody?
Oh, yeah.
Euchre? Okay, euchre and setback, or just euchre? No setback? That's Michigander stuff right there. Michigan, all right. There's a rate on you have 12 R waves on a 10-second strip. Rampersad. Okay, sir, 12 R waves on a 10-second strip. What's our rate? Alpha, 72. Times it by 6 because 10 times something has to equal 60, and that's by 6. All right, very good, very good. Oh, did y'all know, on this day in history? Okay, who said this in 1858? You may fool all the people some of the time. You can even fool some of the people all the time, but you can't fool all of the people all the time. Anybody? Anybody? Bearded man? Nah? Oh, what'd you say? Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, shit.
Abraham Lincoln said that. Abraham Lincoln. All right, okay. Now, in 1920, so prior to 1920, we have the U.S. mail. There was delivering my little wagons and what. Matter of fact, it's very interesting that around 1920, the middle of 1920 was the last time they actually allowed children to be sent via mail. Because for many years, they would send children with the postman. He'd deliver them in his little wagon, usually just a state or two away. But that was allowed until around the mid-1920s, where they said, we probably got to stop, sending these children. But they were going to visit cousins and, aunts and uncles in other states, and the mailman would take them and take them to the door. Pretty amazing. I can't even get them to deliver anything nowadays. So, yeah. Scotch tape was invented on this day in 1930. Okay, so you guys do an ID, right? Tell me what we're going to use Scotch tape for an ID. Pinworms. Pinworms. Oh my God. Last week I had a ship, and Mom brought this young girl in and said, oh, she has pinworms. I'm like, oh, okay. Do you want to see? I really don't. I really don't want to see. But I have to. my backside. And that little girl, I mean, she just bent right over, and there's a worm this long coming out of her booty. I was just like, oh my God. I mean, I've seen pinworms a ton of times, but every single time you see them, you're just like, ugh. And Mom just said, yeah, this happens to her all the time. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Because the girl constantly plays outside and won't stop biting her fingernails. And so that's usually when you get pinworms around. So yes, Scotch tape. So we don't really do the Scotch tape test anymore. When I trained, we did. We really truly did the Scotch tape test, but we don't do that anymore. We kind of just believe the parents. We're like, oh, I'm totally with you. Like, I believe everything you're saying. I don't see this stuff. Okay, on this day in 1960, Psycho, right, was released. Norman Bates. Was his mom really alive or not alive? So it was released, and then for those Trekkies out there, 1966 Star Trek first aired. I had no idea of all the Star Treks. Anybody that wants to actually admit it? No one wants to admit it. Okay, so we've got the original series, right? What else? Discovery, Next Generation, Voyager, I think. Picard.
And all the movie series.
Ooh, Deep Space Nine. They had the animation. All of those from Star Trek. Does anybody know what the longest running Star Trek series is called? All this. Next Generation, 178 episodes. And did y'all know William Shatner? There was no, who was he? He was a captain. He wasn't even there the first, at least the first episode. Maybe in the first two episodes. There was not even a captain on the ship the first episode. And then he became, I think that's the second or third episode. All right. So let's talk about these rhythms. Okay, we're not going to go into specific rhythms. These are the things that you have to think about with every single ECG that you're looking at, and the rhythm portion. So we've already started off. We're looking at our rate already. We're going to determine that rate. Is it fast or is it slow? Okay, that's what we want to know. Or is it regular? So our rhythm, we got our TLOs and our ELOs. So we're going to do our rate. We're going to do our rhythm. We're looking at a rhythm. We're not just looking to see if it's regular or irregular. There's a lot of things that are composed of that rhythm. You've got to look at those intervals, those waves, and those segments that are associated with that. So again, rate, fast or slow, that's what we want to know. So regular, fast or slow. Is that rhythm regular rhythm? So, okay, or is it irregular? Da, 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 da. Or is it irregularly irregular? It means there's no rhyme or reason. It's all over the place. Okay, and that is da 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 da. Right. So we want the regular. Okay, or is it irregular? Da 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 da. Okay, or irregular? It's all over the place. And that's what we have to be determined, because there's only really one main thing that causes irregular. And we'll talk about that when we talk about tachycardias. We got to look at the QRS complex. Okay, are the QRS complex narrow, meaning kind of normal, less than 3 boxes or less than 0.12, or are they wide? Greater than 0.12 seconds, greater than 3 boxes. P waves in QRS complexes. We should have a P, and we go to our PR segment, we should have a QRS or at least a QRS complex. We all know that we may not have that Q in there. We may not even have an S all the time. So you have a QRS complex, and they should be associated with each other. You can't have a P way over here and your QRS complex way over here. They should be associated with one another. When we're looking at those QRS complexes, are they grouped together? Okay? Are they grouped or are they not grouped? Do they occur regularly? And are there any dropped QRS complexes? So when we think about QRS complex, QRS complex represents depolarization of the ventricles, right? So if there's something that's blocking between the atria and the ventricles, we may have a P wave without a QRS complex. So we should have P, QRST. And if we don't have that QRS complex, what is blocking the electrical conduction from the P wave down to our ventricles, from the atria down to the ventricles? Okay, we want to look at our ST segments next. Okay? ST segments. Do we have ST segment elevation? Do we have ST segment depression? Elevation we're getting concerned about an infarct. Okay? Depression we get concerned about ischemia. Remember, infarct, no blood supply, ischemia, decreased blood supply. P waves. Do we have P waves? Do all of the P waves look the same? Do we have P waves that precede each QRS complex? Okay, we got to look at our T waves. Okay, remember we talked about T waves. Should they be symmetric or should they be asymmetric? They should be asymmetric. Okay, they should be asymmetric. We want to look at that, if they're symmetric or asymmetric. Are they upright? Are they flat? Or are they inverted? We've got to look at our intervals. We've got to look at our PR interval, and we've got to look at our QT interval. So the PR interval, beginning of the P all the way to the beginning of our QRS complex, and that's typically 3 to 5 boxes. You can have a shortened PR interval, or you could have a prolonged PR interval. If it is shortened, it leads us to believe there's some sort of accessory pathway that's allowing electrical conduction to go quicker down to the AV node. If it is prolonged, it leads us to believe something is blocking that electrical conduction that's going down to the AV node. And then QT interval, the rule of thumb is less than half the R to R, but you need to know the numbers: 350 to 450 for males, 360 to 460 for females. So is it prolonged or is it shortened? We're looking at that rate. Okay, is that rate fast, like we can see here? Okay, or is it slow? Is it regular? Those top two are regular, but does anybody see in this bottom one, does it look regular or irregular? Irregular, right? And if you can't really tell, again, what I would do, let me show you, step over here. So what I'm going to do on the task, I'm going to take my piece of paper, and I'm going to put my piece of paper on this first R, and I'm going to mark all the way to my second R. And I'm going to move this along. Well, I can already tell that they don't line up. They should line up. R to R's, if it's regular, should line up. So on the exam, you can't use calipers, but you can use a piece of paper. If you can't really tell, like, I don't know, looks pretty close, do that, and that'll tell you that it should be, you should all just move it right along all those R waves, and they should be completely lined up. So is it regular like we see on the top, or is it irregular like we see on the bottom? So fast or slow, regular or irregular. First thing you got to identify. And again, if you can't really identify, can't really figure out if it's regular or not, and you can use calipers like when you go to phase 2, then swing your calipers. Okay, put it on your first one, put it on your second one. Swing it to the next R. Swing it to the next R. It should line up nearly perfectly. You might get a little tiny bit off, you know, with your, like maybe a half of a box or something, but other than that, it should be pretty lined up. And that tells you that this is a regular rate, a regular rhythm, sorry. We're going to look at our QRS complexes. Are they wide or are they narrow? Okay, so are they narrow, meaning less than that 3 boxes, or are they wide, like we see here? So if we count here, we've got about 4 boxes here. And again, you're going from the beginning of that QRS complex all the way to the end. So you've got 1 box, 2 boxes, 3 boxes, 3.5 boxes here. That would be considered a wide QRS. Okay? Are the complexes grouped like we see here? We got dot, dot, and we got a space, and then dot, dot, and then a space, dot, dot. So when we measure these out, if we go from here to here, it looks pretty regular. But if we go from here to here, it's irregular. Okay? So if we wanted to determine the rate, and this is the information that we have here, could we use, in terms of determining the rate, could we use the counting method with this? You can't, because if you use the counting method, and you started here, and you counted over, okay, you are going to get a different answer than if you start here and count over. Okay? You can't use it if it's irregular. So are they grouped together? Do we have any dropped QRS complexes like we see here? P, QRS, T. P, QRST. We've got a P wave, but we do not have a QRS complex that is associated with that P wave. Something is blocking the electrical conduction from the P wave, or from the atria down to the ventricles. We got to figure out what that is. Okay? We should have P's that are associated with our QRS complexes. Looking at that ST segment is next. Is the ST segment at baseline, or meaning our J point? Is our J point at baseline like we see here? Which PR segment is our baseline? We've got our J point right along the same baseline. Okay? Or is it elevated above baseline, our J point? Or is it depressed below baseline? So we look at our ST segments. We've got to look at our P waves. Do we have P waves? P waves indicate that atria are depolarizing. Okay? Do we have the P waves indicating our atria are depolarizing? All the P waves look the same. So let's look at this first rhythm strip here. When you look at this rhythm strip, does everybody clearly see the QRS complex? Right? Does everybody pretty clearly see that there's a T wave after that? Okay, what is all this stuff? Is this a P wave? Is this a P wave? Is this a P wave? You look in here, we don't clearly see that that's a P wave. We see a bunch of this. And we see a bunch of, maybe it's a P wave, I don't really know. Okay, but if I look over here, I can say, well, I know this is a P wave, and this, why can't I see that over here? I see a bunch of things that look like maybe P waves, but we want to know, do I actually see a P wave? So here we don't see P waves because this is associated with an abnormal rhythm. Okay? Abnormal rhythm. Here we can see P waves, but you want to make sure these P waves, if it is coming from the same focus in the heart, the P waves are going to look the same. We want to make sure do all the P waves look the same. And you're going to look at that bottom rhythm strip, that 10-second strip, and you're going to look at every P wave. Does it look the same? Because if it doesn't, then something else is pacing this. Maybe you have SA node, but you have something else that's coming in and generating a P wave as well. And that's what's going to make the P waves look different. So can you guys look and see? You've got a P wave here. Does anybody see a P wave here? Not really. Maybe a little, but does it look like this? No. Does this P wave look like this? No. Does this P wave look like this? All of these P waves are looking different. This P wave over here looks like this P wave, but we're way down here. That tells you atrial depolarization is coming from multiple different places. Somewhere in the atria is taking over intermittently the pacing responsibility, and then maybe it's going back to the SA node, and then back to this abnormal foci in the atria. We've got to see if these P waves look the same or not. Are the P waves followed by a QRS complex? So what do we have here? We have P, QRST, P, QRST, P, QRST, and then we have this standalone thing. So how do we know that's a P wave, but not a, anybody else can think what else it might be? How do we know?
You can march those P waves.
I think someone said it.
You can march the P waves.
March them out. You march them out. You take your piece of paper and you put it on these P waves. I do my mark here. Oops, I want to be there. I do my mark here, and I do my mark to the next P wave, and I march them out. And I will see that this and this, all those P waves are all regular. They are marching out. So it can't be a U wave. I'm just missing a QRS complex. Something is blocking the depolarization down to the ventricles for that one beat, and then look what happens. The body realizes it, the heart realizes it, and goes back to our regular pacing with a P QRS. So you've got to look at every one of those P's. You've got to make sure I have a QRS complex associated with this. And then what do we have going on here? We have P QRST, P QRST, P QRST, and then we have a QRS complex without a P. There's no P, so something is blocking the depolarization from the atria. These are all the things that you have to look at when we're looking at our rhythm. Got to look at those T waves. Are they asymmetric like we would expect? Okay, we're going to kind of slowly go up and then quickly come down. Okay, are they upright? Are they flat? Are they inverted? Are they peaked? Remember, in your limb leads, your T wave should not be greater than 5 millimeters in amplitude, which is one large box, and then precordial leads 10 millimeters in amplitude, which is 2 large boxes. If it is larger than that, then that is concerning for something like hyperkalemia. If they are long and wide, okay, long and wide or wide and deep, that is concerning for some sort of intracerebral hemorrhage or stroke. Could be ischemic, could be bleeding in the brain. That is concerning for that. We've got to look at our intervals, our PR interval, 3 to 5 boxes. Is it prolonged? Is it shortened? Because there are specific abnormalities that are associated with shortened PR intervals that we'll talk about. When we look at the PR interval, is it constant? It should. If it's coming from the same, if the electrical depolarization is coming from the same foci, our PR intervals should be the same. Remember, PR interval from the beginning of the P wave to the beginning of the QRS time. They should be the same. They should march out. Okay, so are they constant? Do they change from beat to beat? Is it getting longer PR interval? Is our PR interval, or is it more consistent? Right? So if we look at this top rhythm right here, so we're going to come over, because we can't really see much here. We're not really sure if this is our T or what this is. So we're going to have our P, Q. We don't have much of a Q. We have a QRS complex at least, and we have our T. Look at this P wave here. Okay, this P wave, again, if you march these out, you'll see that these P waves march out. But this P wave is way away from this QRS complex. Why is it way over there? We don't know. We've got to figure that out. But this P wave seems a little bit closer. Now I've got something attached to this T wave. This is actually a P wave that's embedded in this T wave. Something's going on that our P waves don't appear to be associated with our QRS complexes. That's what you're looking for these PR intervals. Here we have a PR interval, P, QRST, P, QRST, and then we have a P without a QRS. And if we were to measure these intervals by using our calipers, we'll notice that these PR intervals are getting longer, longer, and longer. We've got to look at those QT intervals as well. We've got to look at those QT intervals. Are they normal? Are they prolonged? Or are they shortened? Okay. And then let's take a break and look at this stuff. And we're looking at an ECG, some indications that this rhythm is coming from the SA node. The SA node is our primary pacemaker. We're going to look at lead 2, and we're going to look at lead AVR. If your P is upright in lead 2, and we have our normal QRST, okay, and down going in AVR with our QRST, that tells you this is coming from the SA node. Meaning, if I only give you a rhythm strip, anytime you have a 12-lead ECG, this bottom area is 10 seconds. If I only gave you that rhythm strip at the bottom, you would not necessarily be able to tell specifically this is coming from the SA node. Meaning, the atria, if the atria was a primary pacemaker, could it pace this with a PQRST at a rate of 60? Absolutely. 80? Absolutely. Okay, so if we have a 12-lead ECG, though, we have the upright P in lead 2, a downgoing P in AVR. That tells you this is most likely coming from the SA node as far as primary pacemaker. In our normal sinus rhythm, 60 to 100 beats per minute. Bradycardia is going to be less than 60. Tachycardia is greater than 100. If you look at this bottom rhythm strip and you say this rate is 110. Okay. All right, now I need to know 110, and where is it coming from? I'm going to look up here. Well, I got an upright P in lead 2. I've got a downgoing in AVR. This is a sinus tachycardia. Rate is less than 60. Upright P in 2, downgoing AVR. This is a sinus bradycardia. Lots of things cause tachycardic rhythms rates. Lots of things cause bradycardic rates. Okay, so we got to determine, first of all, is this coming from the sinus? And if not, let me figure out where this is coming from. And as we go into our tachycardia arrhythmia section and bradyarrhythmias, then we will determine what the different causes can be outside of the normal sinus, or coming from the SA node. Okay, let me see here. Holly Allen. Okay, ma'am, what do you think? True or false? CPR does not require mouth-to-mouth breathing. True. Everybody agree that that's true?
Yep.
Can you just do chest compression?
Yes.
In fact, should you just do chest compression? Yes, you kind of should. They've been, this has been studied multiple times. There's been thousands and thousands and thousands of research. One of the really big ones was 27,000 people enrolled in the study, and they determined uninterrupted chest compressions is the best. And that's kind of where we've gone to with our ACLS protocols as well. Okay, what about this one? Lions. Lions. Fingernails grow at different rates. You say true? It is true. Which fingernail grows fastest? The middle finger grows the fastest. The middle fingernail grows the fastest. Interesting, huh? All right, and then what about herring? Nicholas? Okay, sir. Adults hit their head, had a concussion. Should you wake them up throughout the night? False is right. False. And actually kids now too. The thought process is, as long as they're walkie-talkie, as long as they have a prolonged loss of consciousness, you should just let them sleep because they need brain rest. They need brain rest. Because what studies do we do? Someone comes in, they see you in the clinic. I hit my head on the cabinet when I stood up. Well, what studies can you do to determine if that's a concussion? Yeah, so nothing like tangible. You do in the military, we do a MACE, okay? But really, it's their signs and symptoms. There's nothing to tell them that they have a concussion. But if we allow them brain rest, they actually tend to heal up a lot. Their brain tends to heal up. So very, very good. All right. Now, the rhythm evaluation summary. We're going to look at our rate. Okay? That's the very first thing we look at in the ECG. Someone's got a rate of 220, 240. They're not going to be able to sustain that rate for very long before they go into cardiac tension. So we want to look at that rate. And also, if they've got a rate of 20, they're not going to be able to sustain for very long. So you've got to look at the rate. Rhythm. These are all the things that you must look at when you're assessing the rhythm. Is it regular or irregular? Do we have any wide or narrow QRS complexes? Are ST segments elevated or depressed? Do I have P waves? Okay. What about our T waves? What do they look like? What about our PR segment? And then our QT segment. Every single ECG you have to look at that. So the way that I look at an ECG, if I'm looking at this, I'm going to put, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the very bottom. And I'm going to look at that 10-second strip. And that 10-second strip, I'm going to determine a couple things. One, I'm going to determine the rate. You can look typically pretty quickly to say if this is a slow or fast rate. Okay? But you're going to determine the rate, and I'm going to determine is this regular or irregular. I'm going to use that 10-second strip at the bottom to do that. Okay? Once I do those two things, and I'm looking at my patient, that can tell me if I can kind of slow down a little bit or if I need to read this a little bit faster. Okay? Once I start reading the rest of the ECG, okay, so I've looked at my rate, I've looked to see if it's regular or irregular. That bottom strip, I can also tell what's going on with those QRS complexes. Are they wide or narrow? Okay? I can look at that bottom for ST segments, but that's not the only place I'm looking. Now, once we get to our ST segments, you've got to start putting likes with likes. You've got to start figuring out, do I have one part of the heart that is being affected and is causing ST segment elevation or ST segment depression? So I look at that bottom of my rate, figuring out if it's regular, irregular, like QRS complexes or wide or narrow. Now I'm coming up to the main portion of the ECG. I'm looking at 1, I'm looking at AVL. I'm looking at V5, V6. I'm looking for ST changes. Then I'm looking at 2, 3 AVS, ST changes. I'm looking at V1, V2, V3, V4. So I'm putting likes with likes, because if I see ST segment elevation in 1, I should see something in AVL, unless it's a really early stemming. Okay? And then I'm going to look for, again, 2, 3 in AVF. Do I see ST segment in 1? I should see it in the other, unless they're really. If I see ST segment in one of those leads, and I don't see it in the other one, what am I going to do? I'll repeat that ECG in 15 minutes, max of 15 minutes. What is going on? Why do I have ST elevation now? This person started having chest pain 30 minutes ago, maybe because it's a new ST elevation MI. I need to be able to capture this. Because it might only be a box, and I'm looking typically for 2 boxes or higher. Right? So you start at that bottom rhythm strip for a couple of things, for your rate, for your initial rhythm, is it regular, irregular? QRS complexes, are they wide or narrow? And then for my ST segments, I'm going up to the top of that ECG and I'm putting likes with likes. The other thing I can do, I go back down to that bottom. Now I can look at my P wave, because once I determine this person has a okay rate, they have a okay rhythm, and maybe it's a little irregular, but their rate is okay and they look okay, and I determine they're not having a massive MI, okay, I can slow things down a little bit. Now let's look at those P waves. Okay, do I have a P wave that looks the same? Is it one before each QRS complex? We look at those T waves. We look at my PR intervals and my QT intervals. But the first 3 things the first 4 things, rate, is it regular, irregular, do I have wide or narrow QRSs, and what do my ST segments look like? And the majority of you will get it from that rhythm strip. And once you get your ST segments, you've got to go up to the main portion of your ECG, and then you can come back down and look at those P waves. And then your T waves, PR interval, QT interval. So, Micah Hamilton. Okay, sir, what is your rate? Okay, what did you use? Counting method. So we use the counting method, we go 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, so it's between 60 and 75. Does everybody kind of agree with that? Okay? Or no? Right? There, 60 here, 75, so we're in the middle of that. So 70-ish. Okay, can we use any other method?
Yes.
Can we use any other method? Could we use a 10-second method?
Yes.
Because we know this is 10 seconds because it's a 12-lead ECG. So in order to use a 10-second method, what do? We count all the R waves across there, and if there happens to be 11 of them, then we would get a rate of 66. Okay, so we said 70-ish, 66, so, plus or minus 3, right? That's okay. Could you use the 6-second method? I mean, technically you could, but we don't see little tick marks on it, so it'd be really hard. So if I want you to use the 6-second method on something, you'll clearly see tick marks. But counting method is okay because it's regular, okay, and it looks to be greater than 50. So that's okay. All right. So that's the first thing. Lead, Longin lead. Okay, sir. The next thing, so that's our rate. The next thing we're going to look at is the rhythm. What would you say? Regular or irregular? Regular. Okay, we've got a regular rhythm. So we've got a rate that seems to be within our normal parameters. We've got a regular rhythm. Okay. What about our QRS complexes? What do we say about those? Wide or narrow?
Narrow.
Narrow. So they're not greater than 3 boxes. If we look down here, we've got about 1.5 boxes. That's okay. So we like it so far, right? We got a good rate. Our rhythm looks okay. We've got narrow QRS complexes, so they're at the normal parameters. Now we've got to look at our ST segments. So now I'm coming up here. I'm going to 1, going to AVL, I'm going to 5 and 6, I'm looking for that J point. Anybody see anything abnormal with those J points? J point elevated, depressed, all look okay for those ones. I'm going to 2, 3, and AVF, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to D1, D2, V3, V4, so septal, the anterior. Looking for that J point elevation or depression, I'm going to note if I have any abnormalities there. I'm going to come back down to this rhythm strip at the bottom, and I'm going to look for my P waves. I have a P here, a P here, P, 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 P. Okay, I've got P's pretty regular all across here. If I had any concern, I'm going to take my calipers and take my piece of paper, I'm going to mark on the P here, mark here, and I'm going to take those 2 marks and I'm going to move it all along my rhythm strip. And my P should line up. And my P should look the same. I shouldn't have one peaked P, one flat, one rounded. They should look the same. So if I look at these P's, okay, and remember, okay, type A personality type, remember, I'm not saying perfect, but I'm saying they look pretty darn close, pretty darn similar, right? And if you looked at them with a magnifying glass, you can pick out some discrepancies between them. But in general, they look pretty darn similar. So our P waves, does everybody think our P waves look okay? Do we have an upright P in 2 and downgoing P in ABR? We do. So that tells us this is probably coming from the SA node. So right now I have a rate that's in the high 60s, 70s. I got a regular rhythm. My QRSs are looking good. I have no ST segment changes. My P waves are for each QRS and look about the same. They're upright in 2 and down in AVRs. So telling me it's coming right from the SA node. Next thing I'm going to look at those T waves. So I've got a T here, here, here. All these T waves. And they look pretty darn similar. Gradual upslope, quick down. Gradual up, quick down. So they're asymmetric like we would expect. We've got to look at our PR intervals. So beginning of our P to the beginning of our R, we're going to measure those and make sure they march out. Each PR interval should be the same. And then the last thing we'll do is we'll do half our Q2 interval, half of our RS. So beginning of a Q all the way to the end of a T. Take your calipers or your piece of paper, put it up, should be half of the R, or you can count your left. So this ECG looks to be normal. Normal sinus rhythm, because we got upright P and 2, downgoing AVR, normal sinus rhythm with a rate of 66 to 70, regular. If we have a rate, and there's 5 R waves on a 6-second strip, 5 R waves on a 6-second strip, what is our rate? 50, right? Because we have 5 times 10, and that's going to give us 50. All righty, let me see here. Castillo, Ricardo Castillo. Okay, so what's your, this top one, what's your rate? 100. So we've got 300, 150, 100, right? They use the counting method. Can't really use any other method. We don't have enough information. Very good. All right, what about Swenson? Jeffrey Swenson? Okay, sir. What do you think about this bottom one? What's your rate?
60.
60. Counting method? 300, 150, 100, 75, 60. Everybody got that? Everybody's good? You go, sir. What about Jeremy Robinson? Okay, sir, what about this top one? What do you think? Oh, I forgot my move. Oops. How about this one? What do you think about this one? 30. What'd you use? 6-second method. You see how we have a tick here, tick here, tick here? So we have 3 ticks, 3 seconds here, 3 seconds here. We got 1, 2, 3. And because it's a 6-second strip, we times it by 10, and that gives us 30. There you go, sir. All right, what about this second one? Anybody got this second one? What do we have? Still 6 seconds, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
50.
So 50. And then what about the bottom one?
60.
60. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 10 and 60. On this bottom one, could you use the counting method? Looks regular. Okay, greater than 50. So if we did the counting, 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, and right about 50 or so. Okay. How about this one? What do we have to use to determine this one? What method? Counting, right? Because we don't have 6 seconds and it's not a 10-second strip. So counting method, which means we find an R on a line. This is pretty close. This one's right on. 300, 150. 300, 150. Okay. What is our rate for this one? At the bottom, do a 10-second strip. If there's 11 R waves, what would be our rate? 66. Could we use the counting method? Sure, we could use the counting method, right? Because it's regular, it's greater, looks to be definitely greater than. So if we did our counting method, 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, so in the mid-70s. And then the last one, let's see, Corbin.
Here.
Okay, sir, what do you think about this? What's your rate? I tell you, there's 22 of them. Okay, something times that. What are we times it by? Oh, sorry. 132. So what method do we have to use here? 10 seconds. Or if we had tick marks, we could do 6 seconds. But what we cannot use is counting. If you use the counting method, you say, I'm going to use the counting method. I'm going to start right here, because this is pretty close to our line. That's to a dark line. That's 300, 150, maybe 120 or so. Great. But if I use this one, because this is right on the dark line, 300, 160 or so. You cannot use the counting method if it's irregular, because you're going to get different rates depending on where you start. So you must use that 10 second. Use 10 second, you times it by 6. Or if you have tick marks, you do 6 second, you times it by 10. All right, that's it. Thank you.